All right. So, also related to the sleep subject. Um, Now, back in the day, I would have had iPhones. And this was actually something that they made like news articles about, which was that when you set your iPhone alarm, it would just randomly decide not to work. So there were all these people who were dependent on an iPhone alarm to wake them up every morning for school, for work, for really important things. And the iPhone would just decide at random not to wake those people up. This became a real issue, right? And then I want to say that when people have your phone mirrored, um, or when there's a camera in your face, or even if there is a small camera above you. Look, I used to have this ex. It was actually the ex that I'm pretty sure Neuralinked me. He has a camera. It would be like up above the couch, way up there. You can barely tell that it's a camera, this little tiny bead that's above everything. And as you're using your phone, that man can see the password that you enter, and he can see everything that you're doing on your phone just looking down. Now, in his situation, I'm pretty sure he had my phone mirrored, and other people had my phone mirrored. I know that he would spend a little bit of time on his computer, and to that had something to do with how he was able to monitor everything that I was doing, which I don't think should be legal. It's one thing if a couple is married, but in this situation and in all of the situations that I've been in, I was never married. These were just, boyfriends or whatever. I truly believe that it should be 100% illegal for a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a grandma, a boyfriend, or a girlfriend to be monitoring your phone that closely. Um, just, just so bizarre. All right, so basically, other people can see, especially if you're a target, they can see what time that you want to wake up every morning. And if you've been Neuralinked or microchipped or AI injected or eye cameraed, or if your phone's mirrored, then those who are observing can basically make you wake up when they want, earlier than you planned, or they can just cut your alarm off entirely and let you sleep through. This especially becomes an issue for people who have kids. Now, my grandpa used to say something like, I've heard several people talk about how they have a biological clock that they themselves can set. And I totally understand and believe that, and I know that I've experienced that myself. Um, However, I do believe that those who have access to the neural monitoring, any neural linking, anything like that, I believe that they have the ability to wake us up when they see fit. So let's say that a person's shift begins at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and all they're supposed to be doing is watching you through your eye camera, or observing you somehow. And that isn't, you're not actually going to give them anything to observe until you wake up, obviously. I believe that they can decide what time to wake you up, that has more to do with their personal rhythm and their time frame rather than yours. So basically, when you become one of these little monkey guinea pigs for the technocracy, you have to get on their schedule. Your personal schedule ceases to matter anymore. And no matter what time you decide to go to bed at night, they're going to make sure that you wake up when they want you to wake up. Now, there is a little bit that has to do with being a hybrid or alien human hybrid. Some of them have like some different sleep or lack of sleep abilities. I know that this is a complete other subject, but the different alien species and hybrids don't have to sleep on the same schedule that a human needs to sleep. They don't. Their bodies and minds may demand more or less rest than that of a human's. And we can't really argue about whether or not there are aliens, because Congress has already come out and told us that they've shot these beings down, these UAPs down, and pulled live bodies of aliens out. And, there's no telling what would have happened to them, because that was my tripod falling apart. There's no telling what happened to them because of what poor diplomacy skill that we have, apparently. I mean, it seems like I'm just not even going to go there right now because it's hard enough for me to talk to you about the subject that we're on. I believe that there could have been other times that this med tech, these implanted technology or whatever, that it could have been used to keep me awake when I would have preferred to go to sleep. And then that also leads into the dream machine. And there is a dream machine, but also if you already have tech embedded in your skull, and there's this two-way flow, it could be that those who have access to your neural monitoring technology can also affect your dream life. It could mean that they can affect lots of different aspects of your life, even your Skex life. If they can turn your nightlight off and on, then what's to say that they are not capable of turning other switches off and on? One thing that I forgot to mention last time about the neural linking is that I did all of a sudden have to use the bathroom a lot. I would have to run to go number one basically all the time, all day long, after that was done. And I also would have to go number two a little bit more often. And so that was kind of a weird thing that was that began to happen was, and it did actually make me worry. Like, because if something's making you go to the bathroom more, that almost seems like end stage life. I'm not going to say behavior isn't the word I'm looking for. It seemed like end of life kind of symptoms. And I would end up going through what seemed like end stage life symptoms over and over again in this situation, and just would have to just keep coming back and just keep coming back and keep coming back. So I was explaining in the video before that I have been kind of the lifelong victim of this like sleep trafficking ring that my family was involved in. and that I feel that I was more likely to be aware as a kid when things were happening to me, um, potentially because my family hadn't gotten it all down pat yet, how much of what to use or what time or what methods to use to make someone fall asleep and just completely be out the way that they needed. Um, that, and I know that I was the firstborn, at least of my dad, I'm pretty sure. So, that would have been the beginning of them being weird. But again, like I said, there are also apparently family members who I'm unaware of that were also involved in all of this. And then, later on in life, I would still wake up to people who are part of that ring. I would still wake up to things, but I noticed, I began to feel like people were getting away with it a lot more while I was an adult. And there were certain time frames, especially, and then I would find out within the last year or two that the government had energy weapons contracts on me, and they were it's a 10 to 15 year energy weapons contract agreement. And one of the ways that they were using these energy weapons on me was by so I was telling you about how they would send boyfriends. They would always have me a boyfriend and stuff. There would always be someone there. It would always be a boyfriend or a brother or somebody. And those guys, I guess, would be able to tell, or somebody was able to tell, that I was completely asleep at certain times, and they would apparently be able to set up cameras. They would be able to set up, but there would generally be cameras already set up in my apartments aside from that. But from the sounds of things, they were able to, and I did actually wake up at least once or twice to them setting up like surveillance, some tripods and things like that. And there'd be an industrial core, like an industrial video cord that was linked to, I'll get into that at some other point maybe, but not only were they able to set up videos, but they were apparently able to invite plenty of other people in sometimes, not just one other person, but I'm told that they were inviting in potentially 5, 6, 7 other people while I was unconscious or asleep. And they were able to get away with a lot. They were able to do a great deal. That they were able to bring in these energy weapons, and that they were able to actually make videos of them using these energy weapons on me while they were also doing other things to me. And this, as I said, has gone on for at least the last 15 years. It's one of the reasons why I stopped dating. And it's one of the reasons why I couldn't even let my own little brother in my apartment anymore. I had to start being really careful about everything. I mean, they would kind of make things happen in such a way to begin with that you would almost think that they would kind of be done, or maybe that was just something bad that you went through, and that was really terrible. But then they would do it again, and then some time would go on, and then they would do it again. And I knew in the beginning that I couldn't actually make reports about what was happening or speak up about what was happening, and that for the most part, I just had to be completely quiet. I knew that law enforcement wasn't going to help me or anything. And then whenever it would come time for me to actually be so desperate for help that I would turn to law enforcement, I would find out the hard way that I really was not going to be able to get help from them. So part of an area that I am going to, hopefully before the end of my life, I will be given the time and opportunity to actually heal from the wound that comes with being haunted in your sleep, being attacked and abused and assaulted while you're asleep. People taking advantage of you while you're asleep, your own family, neighbors, and associates, acquaintances, all waiting until you're asleep to do whatever they plan to do, waiting until you're laying down and your back is turned. They've really done some really terrible things. And earlier on in my life, I did a great deal to heal from the trauma that I was put through as a kid, and all just to have to turn around and for it to be re-administered to me in even more psychopathic ways than I experienced before, and for there still not to be anyone who I could speak up to about it. Definitely the sleep aspect of all of this is some of the most difficult for me to talk about. It's definitely really painful on an emotional level just how many people will sit back knowing that someone is being abused while they're asleep, and that could just go on for so long, and that so many people would be involved in that, and that no one would go out of their way to speak up for that person, that they would more or less have this idea that people were going to do that to that person either way. They're just doing them a favor by letting them be asleep, and really the only reason why you're allowing that person to be asleep is so that they can't speak up for themselves. You know what I mean? And then also it seems to be a part of their sick science experiments to put a person under like great duress and just, or to attack a person and to be able to monitor them to see whether or not it's even registering to them. Like, they've just done so much, you guys. I'm really glad that I'm beginning to talk about it, but it's complicated. My advice to you is to never, ever give anyone control over monitoring you neurally. You know what I mean? You're giving people knowledge as to whether or not you're actually awake or asleep, as to whether or not you're feeling pain, as to whether or not you're acknowledging that they're lying to you. You're giving them so much power you don't even realize. People actually tiptoed around me so much, and they were able to really just do so much around me. I would wake up and I would just feel the difference in that, like an entire other daytime day had passed while I was asleep. That's how much, activity that there would be while I was asleep. And the whole time people were getting footage and they were banking from it. And to this day, I still haven't seen even one video that anyone has ever made of me. And I'm told that they've made millions. And honestly, I can only begin, the wheels only begin to turn on the research that could be done on someone while they're asleep, you abusing them while they're asleep, and figuring out whether or not it registers, and You know what I mean? How much can we do to this person before we wake them up when we give them these certain different kinds of drugs? Like, there's no telling how much, of an experimental research project, like how much that they actually have learned. And not just about, me personally, but anything that they learned about me, they're just going to use to do the same thing to others. I would end up being so freaked out and worried that something was happening to my kids while I was asleep. I was so worried that this sleep trafficking ring thing was happening to my kids. It was just like all of it happening to us and just continuing on, and that nothing had actually changed all along. I was so freaked out by it that I told myself that whatever anyone wanted to do, they would only have 4 hours to do it while I was asleep. Whatever crazy, weird stuff that people wanted to do, dancing around me while I was asleep, tiptoeing around me, that they would only have 4 hours to do those things. And I began to only sleep for 4 hours a night. Sometimes it would be 5 hours, but for the most part, it was about 4 to 5 hours every night. I noticed that there was a shift in the activity. However, because it became such a short time frame, there was an even more dire and spastic approach to how that shortened time frame was handled on their part. It's almost like the less time that a person thinks that they have, the more dramatic and terrible that they act. And even though I wasn't able to fully see the faces or know the names of everyone who was working against me, they would definitely let me know by retaliating anytime that I would take the measures to protect myself or protect my kids. I even went through the trouble of, even though I was very, very poor, people, kept me like a slave. Whenever I've explained to you, I was asking if someone would help me cut my hair. I was asking about the eye patch. Part of me did feel like back then that I had to ask permission for everything, but part of it was just to see what they would say. As far as wanting someone else to cut my hair for me, it is easier if someone else cuts your hair for you, just saying. It has been really aggravating to me as a slave and as someone who is kept financially controlled and a lower class citizen. It is upsetting to me that I have to work extra and try extra to get something as simple as a haircut that might only be worth $20 or $30. And that kind of ties into everything. Still, it sounds like I'm talking about something else, but it's all the same thing. I do segue like that sometimes, and I do sometimes have focal issues, but this particular subject is really important to me. It's really important that other people know that this happened to me because it is happening to other people. And this absolutely destroyed my motherhood. I realized that was, a ploy that everyone had, but their ability to implant me with certain technologies made it all the more easy, all the easier for people who are psychopaths and completely just corrupt criminals, people who I don't care if they're federal agents or not, because they're part of trafficking rings and they produce illegal pornography. That's not okay. Even if the whole government thinks that it's okay and that that's a good way to make money, it's really absolutely not. It's completely wrong. It's really bizarre to me that you guys have actually gotten away with that for so long. But definitely the neural linking and any kind of microchip, any kind of technological implementation to assist you all with your slavery has been an absolute atrocity. It's been a major part of some secret genocides and massacres that have gone on, and I'm still not done telling you. I'm probably going to continue to just do this in layers upon layers like this, and just continue to add what I can. I, for the most part, am past the basics of what the implant actually did, the symptoms, things like that. I'm sure that I'll remember, as I go, more things and be able to add to them, or add to the videos as I go. But, because I don't really want to miss anything. It was really important to me back then, whenever it happened in 2010. And as just day by day, I tried to remember everything. And just for the life of me, this entire time, I have done my best to protect myself, so that I can be this wealth of information and knowledge, and to let other people know what happened. And, I would hope that information like this, information about human rights laws being violated, there's an entire Nuremberg Code that has been just completely shredded. Just no one cared about that at all. There's some real human rights complaints here. Whether or not the U.S. Constitution is still in effect, there should still be some semblance of international human rights laws that even the United States can be held up to. I should hope that even the United States, such a great nation, could also be held accountable for their crimes against humanity when needed. And as Kash Patel likes to say, no one is above the law. And that is the truth. Technically, no one is above the law. And the law is actually something that was created by God, whether anyone likes that statement or not. And the law is something that one can actually delight in. I may have been born into a crime family unknowingly, and I may have been forced into crime half my life. But I realized that humanity needs people like me, and that humanity needs help. Generations that come after us, we're looking at them facing far worse atrocities than what I experienced in my lifetime. They're already working on it with the next generation. They've already begun to desensitize them even further, to an even further degree than they desensitized our generation and the generations before me. I'm sensitive, but I'm also fairly desensitized. I can also turn that off. That is a symptom of being a member of my generation, and after having been through so much trauma and stress, I do have that ability to turn that off, and to be that cold cutoff game. You know what I mean? But I would prefer to keep a level head about me, and to keep my humanities, and to keep my compassion and my empathy for others, to keep my heart. That's a pretty important thing. I would like to keep my heart, soul, spirit, and mind, even though other people might want those or want to destroy those. And this is where I'm going to end it for today. Peace, you guys.